Echoes of Gaza, a story of pain and hope. The night in Gaza had always carried a quiet lullaby, the whisper of waves on the Mediterranean shore, the laughter of children playing under the moonlight, the call to prayer that resonated through narrow alleyways. But now, the lullaby was gone. Instead, the skies rumbled with the deafening sounds of airstrikes, buildings crumbled like sandcastles, and the air was thick with dust, despair, and death. The beginning of ruin. It all started with a sudden storm of bombs that rained down without warning. Families sat together for dinner, unaware that their lives were seconds away from being shattered. In an instant, homes turned into rubble, lives reduced to mere statistics. Streets once filled with market vendors, bakers, and school children were now ghostly remnants of what had been a thriving community. Among the first to suffer were the children. Small hands clutched at their mothers' abayas, their eyes wide with fear as explosions painted the night sky in terrifying flashes. Innocence was lost in a moment, replaced by the stark reality of survival. The unseen suffering of the old. The elderly, who had witnessed the hardships of wars past, now found themselves too weak to run, too frail to withstand the piercing cold. Abu Yusuf, a man of 80, once prided himself on telling his grandchildren tales of resilience, but now he had none left to tell. His home was reduced to debris, his legs could no longer carry him, and his only solace was the tattered keffiyeh he wrapped around himself against the biting wind. "Why must we suffer till our last breath?" he murmured, watching the sky darken with drones instead of stars. The mothers and their silent tears. Mothers in Gaza no longer feared death for themselves. They feared it for their children. Layla, a young mother of 3, watched helplessly as her youngest, barely 2 years old, shivered in her arms. The cold seeped through their makeshift shelter, just a plastic sheet held up by broken poles. There was no milk, no medicine, and no hope. The cries of hunger were met with silence. The empty hands of their fathers were met with helplessness. Yet, even in her suffering, Layla found the strength to comfort others. She shared the last piece of bread with her neighbor, cradled an orphaned child in her arms, and whispered prayers into the ears of those who had lost all faith. The echo of destruction. With every passing day, the war showed no mercy. Schools, hospitals, and places of worship were no longer sanctuaries but targets. The sick lay untended, the injured bled without aid, and even the simplest act of burying the dead became a perilous task. Yet, the people of Gaza refused to be forgotten. They wrote messages on the ruins of their homes, telling the world of their suffering. They carried the wounded on makeshift stretchers, refusing to abandon one another. And in the darkest of nights, they still whispered stories of a free Palestine to their children, hoping that one day, those stories would become reality. The harsh winter of homelessness. Winter came, but it was no season of warmth and family. It was a bitter reminder of what had been lost. With no roofs over their heads, thousands huddled under shattered buildings, praying for relief. Cold winds bit into their skin, yet no blankets arrived. Rain poured through broken ceilings, yet no shelter was offered. In a world of abundance, they remained the forgotten. Yet, even as the world looked away, kindness survived in small acts. A boy shared his only scarf with an old man. A doctor, with no hospital left, stitched wounds by candlelight. A mother, with an empty stomach, still smiled at her child and said, "Tomorrow will be better." Is there hope? Amid the rubble, a little girl named Amina found a single flower blooming between the cracks. It was frail, much like the people of Gaza, but it stood tall. If it can survive, she thought, so can we. The world watched, some in silence, some in outrage. Protests erupted, voices were raised. But would they be enough? Would the innocent ever see peace again? The answer lay in the hands of humanity. Will the world rise to restore Gaza, to give back the childhood stolen, the homes destroyed, and the dignity stripped away? Will justice prevail, or will the cries of Gaza be forever lost in the echoes of war? Only time will tell. But one thing remains certain. The people of Gaza will endure, for their spirit is unbreakable, their hope eternal, and their love for their land infinite. And one day, perhaps, the lullaby of Gaza will return, carrying with it the promise of peace.